Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajkacharya Ashtotarshi Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki, Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki, Gaura Premananda. Hare Krishna, everybody. Before I start speaking today, I'd just like to request the blessings of all the devotees present so that I might speak something to glorify the Srimad Bhagvatam. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chevam Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayed Nastapayeshu Abhadeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. So, today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, texts 33 and 34, And I will we can chant 33 together because it's on the board, and then I'll go forward and chant text 34. So I'll just find it. Okay. So. Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajastvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chashuradvisham Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chasuram Visham Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chasuram Dvisham Apare Vasudevasya Devasya Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chasudavisham Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Vachito Bhyagat Ajasyam Yashakemaya Vadaya Chasuradvisham Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chasuradvisham. Mataji, you went? Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Chasuradvisham. Apare Vasudevasya Devakyam Yachito Bhyagat Ajasvamasya Kshemaya Vadaya Chasuradvisham. So translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A translation. Others say that since Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly you are unborn, yet you take your birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. Purport. It is also said that Vasudeva and Devaki, in their previous birth as Sutapa and Prishni, underwent a severe type of penance to get the Lord as their son, and as a result of such austerities, the Lord appeared as their son. It is already declared in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord appears for the welfare of all people of the world and to vanquish the asuras or the materialistic atheists. And just because it's a short purport, I'll go on to the next verse. Paravatarayan yaye bhuvo navaivo dado sidancha puri parena jato yatma bhuvatita. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble. Purport. Brahma, or the first living being born just after the creation, is a direct son of Narayan. Narayan, as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, first of all entered the material universe. Without spiritual contact, matter cannot create. This principle was followed from the very beginning of the creation. The Supreme Spirit entered the universe, and the first living being, Brahma, was born on a lotus flower grown out of the transcendental abdomen of Vishnu. Vishnu is therefore known as Padmanabha. Brahma is known as Atmabhu because he was begotten directly from the father without any contact of Mother Lakshmiji. Lakshmiji was present near Narayan, engaged in the service of the Lord. And still, without contact with Lakshmiji, Narayan begot Brahma. That is the omnipotency of the Lord. One who foolishly considers Narayan like other living beings should take a lesson from this. Narayan is not an ordinary living being. He is the personality of Godhead himself, and he has all the potencies of all the senses in all parts of his transcendental body. An ordinary living being begets a child by sexual intercourse, and he has no other means to beget a child other than the one designed for him. But Narayan, being omnipotent, is not bound to any condition of energy. He is complete and independent to do anything and everything by his various potencies very easily and perfectly. Brahma is therefore directly the son of the father and was not put into the womb of a mother. Therefore he is known as Atmabhu. This Brahma is in charge of further creations in the universe, secondarily reflected by the potency of the omnipotent. Within the halo of the universe, there is a transcendental planet known as Svetadvip, which is the abode of Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Lord. Whenever there is trouble in the universe that cannot be solved by the administrative demigods, they approach Brahmaji for a solution. And if it is not to be solved even by Brahmaji, then Brahmaji consults and prays to the Kshirodakshaya Vishnu for an incarnation and solution to the problems. Such a problem arose when Kamsa and others were ruling over the earth, and the earth became too much overburdened by the misdeeds of the Asuras. Brahmaji, along with other demigods, prayed at the shore of the Kshirodaka ocean, and they were advised of the descent of Krishna as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So some people say that the Lord appeared because of the prayers of Brahmaji. Omangena Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramiltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutalai Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadve Tam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanta. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Kankaroti Vachalam Langaite Girim Yakripam Tamam Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Okay, so we have reached a point in the Bhagavatam, a very celebrated and beautiful point in the Bhagavatam of the prayers of Queen Kunti to Lord Krishna. And the part of the appeal and the attraction of these prayers is that, you know, at some level that we all as devotees relate to them, and we can comprehend the purport, the intent behind them. Now, when we look through the prayers, I just wanted to categorize them in a way just to give us an overview of what Queen Kunti is actually expressing to the Lord. And then, of course, we will focus on today's verses and what we're going to be discussing today. So in the first cluster of verses, if you like, well, in the first couple of verses, Queen Kunti, she's describing the relative inaccessibility of the Lord to the average everyday person, and she describes it as the foolish observer, not being able to appreciate the Lord, just like a player dressed as an actor is not recognizable by the average person. So here it implies that there is some kind of a qualification required to access the Lord, to view him, to see him, to be part of his pastimes. And we know Brahma himself, who is the subject of one of our verses today, in the Brahma Samhita, expresses beautifully the qualification required to approach the Lord. And it's the 38th verse of the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena. So that's the first line. And it's basically describing that the pure devotee sees in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salve of love, Krishna himself. And this is a very beautiful answer to the dilemma, I guess, put forward by Queen Kunti, that, Krishna is so difficult to approach. And then, this is just a very brief summary. So she goes on then to describe, the calamities that have befallen Devaki and herself and her sons, the Pandavas, at the hands of their very own family members. And, she describes these, in quite detail, but then at the same time she's inviting these calamities to recur and to come back, because she knows that it's through these calamities that they all actually get to see the Lord and have the opportunity to transcend the the material suffering of repeated birth and death. And then the next group of verses, she goes on to describe actually Krishna's accessibility to certain living entities. And so from describing his relative inaccessibility, then she says, well, actually, Lord, my Lord, you are accessible. And the qualification we see here is that those that have access to the Lord's presence and association are those who are materially exhausted. He is the property of those who are materially impoverished, actually. So we can see that none of these qualifications are materially based. That should give us some reassurance, because we really, we're striving all the time for material benefit, for material gain, to survive in this intense material world. But then we see that, oh my gosh, to get the highest, the highest goal, to reach the highest goal, we need nothing of that. In fact, our qualifications of what was stated by Brahma in the verse earlier, having that sense of devotion, the eyes tinged with a salve of love. So it's like, when we're materially exhausted and materially impoverished, it's like, someone who has one of his senses is not functional. For example, say a blind person. When a blind person navigates the world, the rest of their senses, the rest of his senses are finely attuned to compensate for the lack of eyesight. So, for example, his hearing becomes extremely acute, and his sense of touch, so refined, because, with and that's how the Braille language is so effective, because their touch is so well developed. And in this way, it's similar with us. When our material senses, when our material, the things we have materially, they're taken away from us. Naturally, our spiritual senses and our spiritual life, our spiritual presence becomes much, much more easily cultivated. And we're more open to the development of that side of us, our relationship with the Lord. And then Devaki, she then goes on to talk about bewilderment. So she describes, Krishna, you're unborn. you're unborn, but how is it that you're appearing in this material world? Just the fact that you appear in an apparently material body is bewildering in itself. It's misleading, in fact. And, she describes that, even when you're in amongst us, on this material plane, your uncommon pastimes are bewildering, and she's expressing this incredible kind of bewilderment at how, Krishna, who is omnipotent and all-pervasive, is actually appearing amongst us. And then, of course, we come to the current cluster of verses, which is describing, or in a way, it's almost like speculative questions about why Krishna appears on this planet. She's bewildered why, how he appears, but now it's why do you appear? Why do you appear on this planet? And then, of course, we'll go into that in a moment. And then the natural development of the prayers then goes on to saying, Krishna, are you going to leave now? Now, when we need you so much? Because she realizes that, she and all of his devotees are absolutely helpless without him. Their material and spiritual lives are finished, if he leaves. So she realizes her incredible dependency on the Lord and is thus, begging him, please don't leave us. And then, of course, it's nicely summarized and concluded by Queen Kunti's prayers of request or benediction from the Lord, which is always a beautiful way to end an interaction with the Lord, having some kind of a benediction or request. And Queen Kunti, she requests that she be divested of her attachment to her kinsman, because that is potentially a distraction from her relationship with the Lord. And then she also requests that her natural affection and devotion flows like a river to the sea, straight to the heart of the Lord, without any deviation or without any distraction from other persons in her sphere. So we see that this is just a beautiful kind of logical flow of an expression of devotion from Queen Kunti. And so today we see that we talk about, the reasons why Krishna appears. And, the fact that there's a question, some say, Krishna, you appear for, to glorify the saintly kings, that, Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you and that's why you came, or Brahmaji, he prayed for you, the world was overburdened, that's why he came. But actually, it's kind of, in a way, reflecting our lack of complete understanding of the Lord and, his potencies and the reasons why he does things. But however, we are given through the Shastra and from Krishna's own mouth himself clues as to the truth of the matter. And we know again in Brahma Samhita, Brahmaji, actually the very first verse, he prays, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karanam. So Anadir Adir Govinda, Anadir, he is the origin of all. There is no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. So how can he take birth? How can he appear in this material world when he's actually the origin of everything? So it's a little bit of a contradiction, but being devotees and having access to the Shastra and, Krishna's own explanation, then, it's less of a mystery. But however, we can never fully comprehend Krishna's potencies. And we see in Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, he tells us the reason why he actually comes to the material world. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So, Krishna, he's saying the reason he comes is to deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, and to restore the principles of devotion in the world that we find ourselves in. But in addition to that, we, being devotees of the Lord here present today, we understand one thing. We understand Krishna's prime motivation, the motivation behind the reason that he comes to the material world. And we know this much, that Krishna is motivated by love. He's actually controlled by love. And the Srimad Bhagvatam, of course, holds many accounts of Krishna's loving exchanges with his devotees. You know, the Srimad Bhagvatam being the ripened fruit of the Vedas. This is the objective of all the Vedas. You know, the Vedas that serve as a ladder to reach the point of accessibility to the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, so that Krishna, that we actually experience that interchange, that exchange of love with Krishna and his devotees. And then, of course, when that ladder achieves its goal, then it's taken away and there's no going back. So, but, you know, we see this demonstrated, for example, and we hear this so many times, that Krishna, you know, he will break his own promise to uphold the promise or the integrity of his own devotee. And, you know, we see in, you know, the classical example in Srimad Bhagavatam of Bhishma Deva attacking Arjuna. So Krishna, to this point, has vowed that he will not raise a weapon at the Battle of Kurukshetra. But Bhishma, upon seeing Bhishma approaching Arjuna, his dearmost devotee, with the intent to end his life, then Krishna immediately takes up the nearest weapon, which is a chariot wheel, and rushes at Bhishma Dev like a lion. And despite having promised never to take up a weapon, and we can see the import of this because, you know, in the days in the Vedic culture, where the word of a kshatriya, the word of someone in such a position, you know, was actually like it was the binding force of society. You know, the word of a kshatriya and the word of a brahmana. So, in this way, you know, breaking his word, he's definitely casting some kind of aspersions on his own character, but nevertheless, he does it for the sake of his devotee. And then, of course, we have the example of Lord Shiva, who, when Durvasa Muni is being pursued by the Sudarshan Chakra after having offended Ambarish Maharaj, Durvasa Muni in desperation approaches Lord Shiva. You know, Lord Shiva, what to do? Please help me. And Lord Shiva, he simply says, okay, well, I can't help you, unfortunately, but, you know, you can approach Narayan in the Vaikuntha planets, and he might be able to help you. So, of course, Durvasa Muni, he goes there, and Narayan is there and, you know, welcomes him and interacts with him. But the point is that the only reason that Durvasa Muni could even approach Narayan in the Vaikuntha planets is that Narayan allowed it because it was Lord Shiva that had instructed him to go there. Otherwise, Lord Shiva had no place, Durvasa Muni had no place in Vaikuntha. He couldn't really access it. And then again, of course, we have Prahlad Maharaj, who upon being inquisitioned by his father, you know, if your Krishna is so all-powerful and all-pervasive, then, you know, is he here in this pillar? And then, you know, Prahlad Maharaj says, yes, Father, he actually is in that pillar. And to uphold that word of his devotee, of course, Lord Nrsimhadev appears out of that very pillar. And then there's one last example I'd like to state, and I'm not very expert on this because I don't quite remember the details, but I remember Sri Prahlad at one point in class mentioned that, in fact, this current kalpa, the order of the yugas, I don't know if you have noticed, but it's actually out of order. So we had the Satya Yuga, then in this kalpa we have Treta Yuga, which comes next. Now Treta means 3, so it should be third. But Treta Yuga comes next, and then comes Dvarpa Yuga, which should be second. And then we have Kali Yuga, so that's the 4 yugas. So the fact that there's disorder, the order of the yugas is changed, is again because of the Lord upholding the promise of his devotee to some other living entity. Now, I don't know the details of it, and if anyone knows, please let me know, because I'd love to know the details, but I just remember that. So even, you know, like nothing is beyond the Lord, you know, in terms of supporting and upholding the integrity of his devotee. And then, of course, we have, you know, further in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see in the 10th canto, the incredible intimate pastimes of the Lord with his beloved devotees in Vrindavan, the Brajbasis. And of course, we've just celebrated Kartik, and the most moving and incredible Damodar Leela, where Krishna's intimate exchange with Mother Yashoda, and demonstrating how, in fact, Krishna is bound by love. He's controlled by love. And this love, this incredible potency that motivates the Lord, controls the Lord, that makes him do what he does ultimately in our experience as devotees, is exemplified in a little story. Now, it's an Akbar and Birbal story. I don't know if anyone's familiar with those stories, but Akbar, there's a series of stories that are often recounted in the name of Akbar and Birbal, who Akbar, of course, is a Mughal emperor, and Birbal is the Brahmin advisor of Akbar. And often they're very humorous stories that really demonstrate penetrating spiritual truths. So this particular story, I think it's been recounted earlier in this series of verses, but this particular story, Akbar, one day he questions Birbal. He says, Birbal, if your Lord is so powerful, you always speak of how omnipotent and omnipresent your Lord is. Well, if he's so powerful, then why does he bother to come to this earth? Why can't he just arrange everything from the spiritual world? I'm doubting, the potency of your Lord. And Birbal, he considers, and he says, okay, my king, please give me a few days. I will consider and I will answer your question. So Akbar, he gives the concession of a few days. Now, a few days later, the royal entourage goes out onto the river and in the royal yacht. So they're out on the river, and then behind them, they're followed by the royal guard. So out on the river, Birbal, he's looking out onto the river, and then he sees in the distance a small figure, apparently dressed in royal clothing, that seems to be struggling, even drowning. And so Birbal, he claims, he shouts out to Akbar, he says, Akbar, I think your son is drowning in the river over there. And he said, don't worry, my king, I will arrange for the royal guard to rescue him immediately. But before he can say another word, Akbar is in the river himself, swimming out to rescue what apparently seems to be his son. Now, when he retrieves the drowning person, it appears, it's none other than a wooden mannequin that, of course, Birbal has arranged as part of this ploy to demonstrate the answer to Akbar's original question. And then Akbar, he comes onto the yacht and he says, what is this? I will have your head if you cannot explain to me the reason behind this, this kind of trick. And then, Birbal, he appeases him and he says, Akbar, I'm just giving you the answer to the question that you posed a few days ago. You asked why the Lord appears himself on this earth, when he is so omnipotent and so omnipresent. But you can see that you, once you were aware that your son may be drowning, you didn't wait for the royal guard. You went yourself to rescue him. And similarly, the Lord, he is so attached and devoted and loves his devotees so much. They're all his children in a way. So he comes himself personally to demonstrate his love and to rescue them from this ocean of material existence. So in this context, the context of this love, for the devotee, everything is the mercy of the Lord. It doesn't matter what happens. We hear in the Shikshastakam, Lord Chaitanya himself prays, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace and makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he's still my merciful Lord unconditionally. So it doesn't matter what happens, the devotees understand that, this is all the mercy of the Lord. And it is that makes the devotee fearless. And, in a world full of so much anxiety, in fact, it's almost the driving force of our society these days is anxiety, or the underlying force. The devotee is fearless because he knows that everything is the mercy of the Lord. And in fact, our own founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, his name, Abhayacharana means one who is fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. And he demonstrates this in the gifts that he has given to us as his disciples and grand disciples. But meanwhile, the Lord, while we see everything as his mercy, those who have not yet had the benefit to experience the mercy of the Lord and understand the incredible love he has for one surrendered to him, he tends to overlook the shortcomings of others. And, this is the beauty of Harinam Sankirtan. We go out and we're distributing the holy name of the Lord. We're distributing books because each interaction the average bystander has with a devotee or with a book, then, that is Agyata Sukriti. It increases his devotional merits and credits. And, so Krishna, he only sees what the devotional service knowingly or unknowingly performed by a living entity. And, we have the famous example of Putana, who actually was out to get the Lord. She wanted to kill the Lord, and she came in the guise of, this sweet, wet nurse who wanted to offer him her breast. But in fact, she wanted to kill him. And of course, Krishna absolutely overlooked that and instated her ultimately to one of the highest positions in the spiritual world as one of his nurses. So, so we see the motivating factor for Krishna's everything is the love of his devotees. Although he is impartial, and we see that samaham sarvabhuteshu, I'm not envious of anyone, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. So we can see that even though Krishna is impartial, he loves everyone equally, however, it's much easier for him to engage with us when we're responsive and reciprocating with him, when we're actually present, to interact and exchange with him. And, many parents might have this experience when, their child, even though the parental love is unconditional, and, of course they have the maturity and the understanding to understand the various behaviours of their child. But the child, they may be very obstinate and blocking of, the reception of any love, or not giving apparently any love back to the parent. But the parent, understands that, this is just a temporary phase, or, it's a unnatural phase for the child, and, it doesn't reflect their true, personality or identity. So this is a similar position of the Lord. And I very much love an example given by Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj. This is last year sometime. He gives the example of two students who sit for an examination, and one student, achieves 49 out of 50. Oh, sorry, not out of 50, 49, or the 50 is the pass mark. And now the professor, he knows the student, and he knows he's been working hard all year, and he's put in absolutely all his effort, and this is, what he could achieve at maximum. So the professor, through his mercy, allows the student to carry his mark over to 50 and allow him to pass and, of course, progress through the rest of his studies over the course of the term. Now, there's another student, however, who scores 20 on the exam. The professor also knows this student and knows that he rarely comes to class. And if he comes to class, he's usually asleep, and he really has made no effort in the whole term. So the professor says, well, look, there's not much I can do, because it's not on my merit that he should, go forward and pass. It really has to be partly his merit as well. He has to contribute something. So he has no power in a way. I mean, he has the power, but he really doesn't think that it's appropriate to help this student anymore. So in that way, we can see that, our reciprocation, our devotional merit is also important in achieving the mercy of Krishna. So although causeless, Krishna's mercy is causeless, but it does depend on a degree of credit and mercy and credit and reciprocation that the Lord gives back to the Lord, that we give back to the Lord. And however, having said that, the Lord absolutely has no limits. It may seem that he's limited, in what he can do, but no, the Lord is not limited in any way, shape, or form. And we can see this in Antya Lila and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, Shivananda Sen, an associate of Lord Chaitanya, was travelling from Bengal to Jagannath Puri to meet with the Lord. And now Shivananda Sen, he was very attached to a dog. He just had this attachment to the dog, and he would care for it very carefully and, offer it prasadam. And anyway, he was very attached, and he allowed the dog to join their party on transit to Jagannath Puri. Now, at one point, this dog got lost. And, so many things happened along the way, but at one point this dog got lost, and Shivananda Sen was beside himself. And anyway, they just didn't know what to do. But anyway, eventually they reached Jagannath Puri, and there, lo and behold, they see the dog, in the association of Lord Chaitanya, no less than being fed the green coconut pulp of the remnants of Lord Chaitanya's meal. So in this way, they could see that the dog was actually given the mercy of Lord Chaitanya himself. And Lord Chaitanya, the dog, in fact, disappeared again the next day. And the devotees could understand that, well, the dog has achieved liberation. He's actually attained the spiritual world, all by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So we can see that, the Lord can do anything. So even a dog can be liberated if that is the will of the Lord. And it also, this pastime also demonstrates a beautiful point that the Lord he values his devotees so much. They are so dear to him that one who is dear to a devotee is also dear to the Lord. So part of this dog's merit was that he had the association of Shivananda Sen. He was so dear to him that in that way the mercy was transferred from the Lord to this very fortunate dog. So in the cluster of verses that just question almost speculatively why the Lord appears why the Lord appears in this world. All the suggested reasons are very valid, and they actually provide an infrastructure. It's not that, it's not one or it's the other or anything like that. It's actually, all of it is like foundational for the pastimes of the Lord, which are very meticulously recorded in the Srimad Bhagvatam. And we see these pastimes, in fact, in themselves are a method, a sort of pathway for the devotee to traverse through reading the Bhagavatam, hearing the Bhagavatam, to actually reach the ultimate goal of love of Krishna. And, all of these pastimes, they're ultimately designed for the Lord's own pleasure, and also, additionally, to facilitate those who are drowning in the material ocean. And we can see that the Lord, he's always multitasking. He never achieves just one thing at one time. There are always many purposes served with any one action or part. Take the time to read these incredible accounts of the Lord's interactions with his devotees. We are there. We firsthand experience this incredible exchange of mercy. It's not like, we consider, then we integrate, and then we're there, we experience it. It's actually our own personal experience it becomes. And so as the Lord loves us, it is natural for the devotee to love the Lord, for the living entity, in fact, to love the Lord. Some of us just don't know it yet, but, that is who we are. And we're told so often in the Vedic literatures that Srila Prabhupada actually painstakingly delivered to us that our natural constitutional position is in servitude to the Lord, servitude in love to the Lord. So this is who we are. This is just the facts, the way it is. There's just no other way around it. And the reason why so many of us are in misery is because we just don't know it. We don't know it. We haven't experienced it. We don't see it. And I often think of the example of non-devotional songs. Now, I know that none of you listen to non-devotional songs, and I know that you wouldn't try this at home either. But nevertheless, if you happen to hear a non-devotional song in a public arena, then if you actually hear the song, inevitably, that crooning of the voice of the song, of the pop star or whoever it is, that yearning, that longing that they're expressing for some unknown entity is no less than actually crying out to the Lord himself. And in this way, it's actually misdirected, if you like. So, of course, there's an object of that living entity's affection, that object of that person's affection that they're focusing on, that this inspired the creation of this song. But really what they're seeing in that person of their affection is a quality of the Lord, that they're glorifying themselves in this song. And we even see it, again, with Lord Chaitanya. At the Ratha Yatra festival, he sings a Kami song to Lord Jagannath, a Kami love song, no less. He's singing, but the thing is, this love song is sung with such an incredible devotion at the level of parakiras, the ultimate parakiras, which is, loving sentiments, conjugal loving sentiments in a non-marital relationship. So the highest, most expression of love is expressed through this Kami song that Lord Chaitanya is singing. Now, the difference here is that it's flipped. So the Kami song, the initial intent, the initial focus of the song is flipped to be in glorification and devotional love and sentiment of the Lord himself. And it's like that. It's just with anything like that, devotees are such that we have the ability to flip things, or we need to learn the ability to flip things. So there's so many things that we can use in the service of the Lord. So much knowledge, so much expertise, so much knowledge out there that is not necessarily within the sphere of the Krishna consciousness movement, but ultimately all knowledge comes from the Vedas anyway. But if we can use this knowledge, intelligently in the service of the Lord, then of course, we every moment is a devotional, an expression of devotional service, and we see that devotees, in that way, they're not ordinary. And they may appear ordinary. And it's like, Srila Prabhupada, he said, you don't have to change anything. Don't change anything. Just add Krishna. So in this way, the devotee appears ordinary to the outside observer. They don't appear much different from anyone else. Of course, if they're not wearing a devotee or a sari. But ultimately, out there, in the working world, the devotee appears just like anyone else. But the key difference is that everything is flipped to the service of the Lord. And it comes down to, how we use the knowledge that comes to us. What is our motivation? Why? How are we using that knowledge? And if we have that correct, if we have that foundation established, our motivation, the reason why we do anything we do, if it's in the service of the Lord, then, it's actually the ultimate perfection. This is devotional service, pure devotional service. And, so in Nectar of Instruction, actually, we even see Srila Rupa Goswami, he mentions that, again, the devotee to ordinary vision may appear imperfect. They may have some kind of impediment. They may be, physically deformed, or they might not appear like someone who might be elevated or godly or saintly, but in actual fact, the devotee, that is something to be absolutely overlooked, and it does not define the devotee, because it's the heart of the devotee that defines them. It's the presence of the Lord in their heart and the recognition of the devotee of their position in relation to the Lord as a servitor, as his eternal servitor, and also when they're engaged in that reciprocal exchange with the Lord, then there's nothing ordinary about that. So, this particular verse, we didn't touch too much on it, but the second verse 34, it describes Lord Brahma approaching on behalf of the demigods, the Lord, to beseech him, to request him to come to the earth as an incarnation to save the drowning material world. And this verse in itself, it implies like a hierarchy of approach to the Lord. And indeed, in Krishna consciousness, what we've been given by Srila Prabhupada, there is definitely a hierarchy. Of course, we have, senior devotees. We have our spiritual masters who act as the bridge to our connection with the Lord, until we are at a point where we can maintain that connection in a very strong and steady way ourselves. But having said that, within these verses of Queen Kunti, the prayers of Queen Kunti, we also see that, Krishna, he is the property of the materially impoverished. He's the property of those who are materially exhausted. So that initial contact, that initial, connection with the Lord, it's dependent on nothing else but the mercy of the Lord himself. So we will conclude there. So thank you very much. And I don't know if anyone has any questions, or probably don't have very much time, so we might just conclude there. Grantara Srimad Bhagvatam ki